Good evening, gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen, rather. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we're just going to jump right into it. Hi, hello, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to A Fearapeutic Lens, where my wife, Renee, you will use her expertise to share some insights she has about the psychology of films or video games of the horror genre, though we may branch out in the future. Why not go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself, Renee?
Hello, I am Ryne Escher. I am a licensed therapist, actually now in a couple of states because I just went ahead and did that. I've been practicing in mental health for about 15 years. I've done a little bit of everything from inpatient, outpatient, medical, clinical, currently working with a group practice doing private practice kind of stuff. And super nerdy when it comes to movies and film and video games, and especially when it's in the realm of psychology. Like, I love this stuff. So we decided to start this channel.
And I'm her husband, Nox. We have been married for 16 years and we have a beautiful baby boy together. My role in this is that I will bounce questions off of Renee from the layman's perspective. I also put all of this together, so if this all looks a little free trial to you, that is because it is. We've never done this before, and, well, other than a handful of times, we're struggling. I'm not great at this. I'm hoping to learn. Everything you see is subject to change and hopefully improvement. Tonight we will be discussing The Woman, a 2011 American horror film directed by Lucky McKee, who also shares writing credits with Jack Ketchum, as the two co-wrote the film and novel. Special note, this is not a review. We are operating under the assumptions that you are familiar with the movie and looking for some extra insights. If you haven't seen the movie, you might still get some entertainment out of this, but we do recommend you watch it if you can, because we both enjoy it. Also, an important notice: the psychoanalysis done in this video is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended as therapeutic or diagnostic advice. If you feel you are experiencing mental health related symptoms, please seek personal care from a licensed professional. So, The Woman. Yeah, it's, how did we get recommended this one?
Well, before we jump into it too, I know we have a lot of our, little legal things that we talk about in the beginning. Um, I know we try to put trigger warnings on this, and I was telling a friend of mine that this was our review, and she said, "Aha, yep, I'll put that on in the background so you can get some views." But I don't think I can watch that because it's a little intense. This movie does have instances of domestic violence, does have instances of sexual assault and rape, and there's insinuation of incest. So just please be warned that we will be kind of talking on these things as well. Okay, but going back to your question on how this was recommended, is I think this popped up on a couple of top 10 horror movie lists about, when the main characters are the real villains or something like that, and I just kept popping up. I'm like, yeah, we should watch that. And yeah, I like the movie, but oh my gosh, is it intense.
Yeah, and also for those who are not too strong in the stomach, there is also some ooey gooey gore and violence, and it is kind of uncomfortable to look at, especially considering who some of the victims are. So yeah, the fair warning.
But yeah, that's how we got recommended this, as it kind of kept popping up on some different lists. And I really like oh my gosh, if it wasn't so late at night, my brain could work. The person who plays the woman, really like her and everything. Pollyanna McIntosh, there we go, came to my brain. Really like her stuff. So I was also interested in watching it because of her.
Yeah, I believe we first saw her in The Walking Dead, where she played Jadis.
Actually, the first movie we saw her in was The Circle. Or no, The Exam. The Exam, that's the one. We saw her in that first, didn't know her then, and then when we watched Walking Dead, I'm like, oh, hey, it's that chick from the Exam. And yeah, seen her in a couple of other things since then too.
Oh yeah, The Exam was a fun movie where, yeah, very literal in their wording.
Could be a movie to review in the future. Kind of interesting topics on that one too.
Ooh, peer pressure and all that fun stuff. All right, but to get us started, so we have the woman. Fair warning, we did not know this going into this. This movie is actually a sequel, and if we go by the novels, it's actually the third entry. We didn't know that going into this movie, so we had a few, theories that would have made would have been formed better had we known what happened previously. So, yeah, just yeah, fair warning there. But our movie begins. We have the woman. She is in a river. She is cleaning and dressing a wound. She's very messy. She's dirty. She is a wild woman. And if you've seen the previous movie or read the synopsis of this woman or this one, know that the woman is the last member of a surviving clan of cannibals. So fun.
Yeah, which kind of parallels some things that I think Nox might talk about later with the Sawney Bean legend. You can definitely see some of that stuff in here. But yeah, no, I think it's really interesting how they show her really just on this path of survival right off the bat.
But she's on her own out in the woods. She, dresses her wound, and then she's creeping towards this den in the woods, and we hear some growling of a wolf, canine type thing in there, and she just creeps into the dark and pulls her knife. The wolf is growling louder, and she hisses at it and attacks. And the film cuts away to show the exterior, so we don't see her cutting this wolf up with her knife. But she is victorious. The wolf is dead.
Which I think kind of shows you right off the bat just how powerful she is, how she is also very predatory and, trying to do what she needs to survive. But, she's not frightened easily. She's not afraid to charge things head on and go after a challenge.
It's also an interesting choice that they do not show her killing the wolf, yet they show many other things later in the film.
Sometimes it's this mentality that there are certain things you don't do in films and horror movies, like hurt children and hurt animals. And yeah, some people actually do coward out at the end and turn away on those things.
So she has killed the wolf, and this is now her den. So she lays down for a nice rest, and we get this interesting dream sequence that seems to go between images of her creeping through the forest, running through the forest. We get visions of the wolf, and then in a cave, we see a baby sitting in, outcropping sort of thing, and a wolf that creeps up toward it and starts sniffing it. We get, cuts of the woman, creeping and looking and watching the baby and the wolf, and then she seems to pass out, and we zoom out of the den, and we hear baby crying and wolf snarling, and then a distant scream and stuff like that, and I've clicked too early. And then we get the title screen.
Which it's always really interesting to me, and I actually talk to a lot of clients about it. I am trained in EMDR, which, if people are not familiar with that, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's used a lot for trauma therapy, but the entire point of it is that the idea is that we heal our brain when we're dreaming. And so when we have dreams, we have all of these abstract thoughts that are in our subconscious that our brain just kind of roots around and goes, hey, let's deal with this thought. And we'll do some abstract thinking. So a lot of times I enjoy doing a lot of dream analysis with clients sometimes. Because you get into a car crash in a dream can symbolize that you feel out of control. Flying can symbolize also loss of control, also a sense of freedom. And I really think that a lot of the things in this dream sequence was the running and the going through the woods was her wanting to be free, wanting to be who she is. And then the part with the baby and the wolf, I kind of saw two different ways that could be going. Is the wolf is her, right? The predator, and that she wants a child, but also could be significant of maybe she has had a child in the past that did not survive, and there's some birth trauma there. Which is why the baby is coming up and then taken, so to speak. Again, we don't see that part, but it's insinuated that the wolf is. Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting to see the juxtaposition of wanting to be free, but also wanting to be a mom.
All right, then we got the title card, and then we cut to bright daylight. It's a big old party in a front yard of a nice estate. We first see this is Peggy Cleek. We see her reading this book. Maybe someone smarter than I can draw the connection, but looking into this book, it's kind of an interesting crime thriller thing that has gone to inspire other filmmakers, but I can't draw any connections to this movie. I think it's just Peggy's reading the book, and this is a book that interests her. But she is sitting at a poolside, and we see a boy come up to he playfully splashes her with water to try and get her attention, and she just looks away across the yard to her father, who's watching over everything. Anything to say about Peggy before we get to the dad?
I think it's really interesting, especially like this picture that you have right here, is her body language, right? Her legs are crossed. She's actually almost turned away from the pool. I don't know if that makes sense. Like she's not straight head on with it. She's kind of turning to one side. There's a lot to be said about body language. Uh, like I've looked into some things with like a sensory motor psychotherapy and things like that, where we have these undertones on how we hold ourselves. So her crossing her legs is a sign of like trying to protect herself, trying to be closed, kind of being closed off. I think it's more symbolic that she has herself positioned with her back toward her dad, but in a place where she could still see him. So she doesn't have to see him the entire time, but also she can know where he is at all time.
And then we follow her eye. She's looking to the side, and we see her looking and seeing her dad, Chris Cleek. He is standing at the edge of a deck. He's looking over the entire yard, watching the party. Then his wife, Belle, comes up. She brings him a beer. Comments on the party and mentions that they have a friend that wishes to speak with him. Chris is kind of dismissive at first, and then tells her to go off and get him a hot dog. But first, he tells her to pull their daughter, Darlin, away from a boy who she's kind of getting all kissy with.
And yeah, Chris Cleek, sorry, he's like the epitome of narcissistic personality disorder. His spot on the deck where he's standing is kind of this almost I am lord of all that I survey. When the friend comes up to start talking with him, all pet names. Well, hey, sweetheart. Well, no, darling. Well, hey, honey. That never actually refers to a lot of these women by name. They're all pet names, which I think is kind of this patronizing way about him. But he is so charismatic. Like everything that he says, he just says it with just so much suave that some people just don't take notice that he's being really controlling or trying to push them in a certain direction. But yeah, this was just really interesting to actually almost see him set up as literally controlling and domineering.
Yeah, as the camera approaches him at the edge of the deck, it's almost sort of like Commodus and Gladiator.
Yeah, that's a really good parallel right there. Yeah.
Anyway, so Belle runs off. She pulls Darlin away from the boy she's getting all kissy on and gives her a talking to. And we see them there in the corner. But beyond them, we see the young gentleman of the Cleek family. This is Brian Cleek. He's sitting off to the side, in a little basketball court area. But he's watching a group of boys who are harassing a smaller girl. And he watches for a good long while before he kind of just, turns away and starts practicing his basketball.
So I saw this again as a really interesting I guess, behavior, but it also makes sense with having his dad, and especially as we go further into the film, the things that happen. Um, but right, he's watching what's happening to this girl, and he's not interfering with it. One, because it's okay, right? Like, men should have superiority over women. That's kind of a lot of what goes on in this movie. But when he turns away and doesn't get involved, one, he's going back to basketball, and that kind of recurs quite a bit with his dad saying, "Hey, have you practiced? Hey, are you okay?" So there's like this chasing perfectionism portion. And two, I think if he got involved and then there were too many people at this party, so if he got caught, it would embarrass his dad. So he's in fear of what could happen. So um, he could have stepped in and stopped what was happening, but then that would mean that it wasn't okay, but he doesn't think it's a problem.
Yep. So, with the members of our family established, we cut back to Chris. Dina, the friend that Belle mentioned earlier, approaches, and she's an elderly woman. Her husband is not long for this world, so Dina wishes to sell off her property to buy a smaller place to where she could spend the final days with her husband. Chris, offers her a fair deal, but yeah, we do get the pet names. I think he only refers to Dina by her name once, and yeah, but he does. He hugs her to reassure her, "I'll give you a fair deal," and you know,
Well, and I think it's really interesting too, this dynamic, right? The, oh, I'll give you a fair deal. I don't know if anybody here has ever gone to like buy a car or to go get something and you go in wanting one thing, but somebody tells you that, oh, well, that's not actually a great idea. You should do it this thing and it's a better idea for you. And then it turns out that really all it did was get them a better commission. That was what I got here. Dina was very much like, "Oh, I'm scared. I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. There's so much." And he just keeps reassuring her, "Oh, I'll take care of you. Oh, I'll." Oh, versus like explaining to her, "Well, these are some options that you have. What do you think would work best for you?"
all right. But now it's time to leave. Uh, Brian climbs into the car with Chris first, and this is when Chris asks how his basketball practice went, and you know Brian is kind of like, yeah, I did okay, blah blah blah. He's not doing great, but Dad's like he shares the immortal wisdom of free throws win ball games. He's like, okay, Dad, yeah. And then they see Belle and Peggy approaching. Um, Another gentleman approaches Peggy to talk to her, and she kind of brushes him off. And Brian comments to Chris that this is just some asshole that her brother that Peggy dated once, and he's kind of I think he actually calls him a prick.
Almost like tattletale to Dad, right? Like,
You
"Oh no, this is what's going on, and see, I'm paying attention too."
Yep. Dad just has a comment of, interesting.
Well, and I think in this scene too, and I think it's probably what you're coming up with next is, Brian is in the front seat. He gets in the front seat. He's hanging out in the front seat. But when Belle comes up with Darlin and they get in the car, Brian is not going to move. He doesn't want to move. He feels like he's above his mother, that he should be able to sit in the front seat. And the only reason he moves to the back is because his dad tells him to.
Yeah, they're subtle at the start, and then it gets worse.
Yeah, this movie is not about subtlety. And again, it's kind of hard to talk about some of the earlier stuff being subtle without just overtly talking about some of the things that happen later. Like again, we won't spoil too quickly. Um but yeah, you definitely can see the power dynamics in families going on here. And this family does, Dad is the boss. Anything he says goes. It does not matter.
But then when they drive home, and we get a nice shot of their house, and then we cut to the next morning where we have Chris, at the dining table. He's preparing to go hunting, and Belle is sitting there rolling cigarettes for him. He takes one and this is the first we hear of the dogs. The dogs are barking their heads off. We hear them outside, and Chris, asks her if she's going to take care of the dogs, and she says that she'll have Brian do it when he gets up. And I think Chris just smiles at that before he gets up and leaves.
And again, kind of the subservient wife here, because I don't think we ever see her with cigarettes. So her rolling the cigarettes, she's doing this for him. She's doing it for his hunting trip. She's doing it because it's expected of her to serve her husband, sort of a thing. But what I think is so interesting with this scene is, she seems very calm, cool, and collected. But when he leaves, she actually acts a little bit like scared. Like you just kind of see her body language change.
Oh, yeah. This is the look on Belle's face after Chris leaves. He loads his gear onto a four-wheeler, starts it up, and this starts the dogs all barking their heads off again, and then he drives away, and we cut back to the house, and this is the look on Belle's face.
And I really need to look up the actual study who did it, but it is something that I always keep in mind. Is there's a study that actually found that children who had predictable home lives growing up grew up to be more well-adjusted individuals. Now, that sounds like, well, duh, yeah, that makes sense. However, what is interesting is kids who actually had very abusive households but were still predictable. Like, I know my parent is going to come home drunk. As soon as my parent walks in the door, they are going to hit me. Those sorts of kids actually grew up to be a little bit more well adjusted. Like, yes, they had trauma and yes, they probably had things to work through. But people who had unpredictable, oh, are they going to be mad today? Are they going to be nice today? How are they going to treat me? I don't know. Tended to have very unstable images of themselves and how they view the world. And I really feel like that's kind of what's happening here. While she's doing the cigarettes, it's insert tobacco, roll, insert tobacco. Like it's something that she's very used to, very consistent. But when he leaves, is he going to be happy because he gets something? Is he going to come back upset because the hunting was bad? When will he come back? And that instability and that uncertainty just puts her in a state of anxiety and fear.
All right, and with this next scene is where we have me having to be very selective in when I use screenshots, because we see Chris spending his day hunting. He's stalking through the woods. He takes a cigarette break, continues, crawling through the leaves, looking through the scope on his rifle, and he happens upon the river. And he sees a woman bathing in the river. And she is topless at first, cleaning off her wound, and music begins playing. Very loud, very interesting lyrics. Something to the effect of, I know I gotta make her mine, as he's watching her bathe herself, and he's, he licks his lips and he's like, oh, wow, what have I found?
Yeah, and then she puts her top back on and starts walking away. And then 5 seconds later, boom, she's completely naked. And then her clothes are back on. So, just the immediate sexualization that he puts upon her. And like you said, the song with the I need to make her mine, it's not anything about like he actually wants something good. It's all power and property and ownership going on.
And another interesting thing of note is that he literally does watch her as she pulls out her knife and instantly spears a fish and just takes a bite right out of it in front of him. And we're still getting the, him flashing, seeing her naked, him seeing her, as she is walking away fully dressed. And he tracks her to her den. He's following behind her, and she occasionally is stopping to look around like she senses something, but she never seems to spot him.
Yeah. So there's again a lot of this here, but I think it also starts to kind of speak to his mindset, right? Like we know that this is what's going on in his head. He's sexualizing and all of these sorts of things about her, but then it's so interesting that when everything happens, oh, it is our duty as good citizens to civilize her and it's just like, no, that is you guys are barbaric people. What are you doing?
Yeah, but as our song number ends, we cut Chris arriving back home at night. Brian is there practicing his basketball, and Chris, asks him how he's doing, and Brian sounds like he's doing a lot better. But Chris has a surprise, so everyone needs to come inside. And we get a shot of Belle again as Chris returns.
Yeah, and see again, it's that anxiety and that unpredictability, and oh my gosh, is he going to be in this mood? Is he going to be in that mood? And there's a scene that we'll talk about a little bit later that I really picked up on it in this later scene. But I am 90% sure a lot of those blank stares that we see from Belle is her disassociating to escape the reality she's in.
Yep, I can just picture having, shutting down to the anxiety of what's going to happen when he gets back, and what if he sees something wrong. But then when he gets back, it's like, oh, better get moving because that'd be worse.
Well, and when we talk about disassociation or depersonalization and different things like that, I think a lot of people think that it's like you black out and you don't know what's going on. But I've had a lot of clients describe to me, in fact, I think one of the descriptions I heard from someone, and again, it's different with everybody, was when she disassociated, she was almost like watching a drive-in movie. Like she was further away and everything that was happening was on a movie screen. So she had this distance. I guess kind of thinking of that scene in Get Out, where he goes in the sunken place and he sees her on a TV really far away, but he isn't close enough to interact or do things. That's kind of what we mean by disassociation.
All right. Well, Chris comes in and he wants to gather up the family. He has a project that he needs help with. He takes them outside to it's kind of like a storm cellar sort of situation. And he takes them in, and this place is, stacked with, knickknacks and old stuff. And he's like, I need everything cleared out. We can burn certain small stuff. We can throw away other things. And Peggy initially protests because it's like, we got to do this before dinner. And he's like, yeah, we got to do it before dinner because I asked you to. And he's not telling them what the surprise is.
Well, again, I'm controlling you guys. Come in, do this work for me. Oh, but I gotta leave you hanging a little bit longer. Oh, nope, you haven't earned the right to know this secret yet. Ha ha ha.
So there's also another thing about how the buck was passed on dealing with the dogs to Peggy again. But then it is the middle of the night. We hear the sounds of Chris working in the cellar, and the dogs are, of course, barking all night. Belle comes downstairs to find that Peggy was sitting here in the dark, just sitting there wondering what her dad is up to. And when Belle approaches to ask her why she's up so late, Peggy asks her, what's Dad doing? And Belle just kind of brushes that question off and tells her to go to bed because she has school tomorrow.
And I think that there's a lot of, Peggy can't sleep because she's anxious. Again, that unpredictability. What is he doing? What is the point of this? Is this going to be something that is going to hurt us? But I think the mom, instead of alleviating a lot of the kids' fears, just dismisses them. Like, no, go to bed. No, it's fine. No, you have school. That's more important. It's just kind of interesting to have this moment where you have two women with none of the men involved to see how their interactions are with each other too, right? You can see that they're both in fear, and they kind of, Peggy more than Belle in this point can express the fear, but it's still dismissed.
Then we cut to the next morning. The woman emerges from her cave, and immediately Chris is on the ridge behind her and drops a net on her. The woman thrashes around. She hisses. Chris approaches her with his gun, and he's yelling, "I don't want to hurt you," before he reverses the gun and smacks her upside the head with the butt of it and knocks her out.
Such a gentleman. Such a nice guy.
And
but also, again, and I know, sorry, it's just one of those things, too, that I want to point out is the difference between what he says and his actions. Now, we've seen that in movies time and time again, right? I'm not going to hurt you. And then they stab you with like a needle to, but I think, again, it's one of those moments that shows just how much we can't trust what comes out of his mouth.
But then smash cut to school. This is Ms. Raton. She teaches geometry to Peggy and her peers. She's kind of young. She's wearing high heels and I wouldn't say short skirt, but definitely not the what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of wholesome school teacher look. No, she's young, she's attractive, and she knows it. But she's asking questions and notices Peggy in the corner and tries to get her to participate. But Peggy, wasn't paying attention. She was lost in her thoughts, and she repeats an answer that was already given. The class laughs at her, and Peggy is all of a sudden not feeling too well, so she has to be excused and runs out.
So another part of this scene too, and I don't know if you caught this the first time, Nox, but the teacher does pick up a piece of paper that, what do they call, like, Mrs.
That's after
Ike?
class, but yeah, that's next.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry, I'm popping through a little bit, but I kind of thought it was interesting to see that and kind of how she's paying attention to her students and she's going through all of this, but with her clothing, and again, no shame here. If she feels powerful doing it, great. But with this movie having a pattern of how we're perceived by others on the outside and trying to keep secrets away from others, I kind of felt like she dresses provocatively to try and seem more straight to people just so that they don't ridicule her for her sexuality or anything. I don't know. I just kind of got that impression that this is literally a show that she is putting on with how she dresses. And again, she's a gorgeous woman, and I wish I could wear stuff like that at some point. But good for her. I just think that it's interesting in this movie that they make a huge point to point out how she dresses is not what you would normally expect.
But yeah, then after class, Ms. Raton finds the crumpled up doodle left behind and the insulting drawing. That is after class where Peggy returns to gather her things. Ms. Raton expresses some concern over Peggy's well-being, but Peggy just brushes her off for now.
Which sadly I think is very normal, especially going at somebody almost directly, like, hey, what's the problem? Hey, what's going on? You do get the impression that her and Miss Raton have a pretty good relationship, like that maybe Peggy was a favorite student and all that sort of thing. But I do know teens, it's really hard for them to come out and say things when you ask direct questions like that. But it's important to ask. You should not ignore doing it. It's important to do.
But next, still at school, we have Brian. It is recess, and he's having a basketball shootout, and he loses to this girl here. And he has the totally mature reaction of going back inside, chewing up a wad of gum, and reaching into her bag to pull out her hairbrush and putting the gum in it.
Right, emasculating behavior. I was beat by a girl. I must now shame her. And how do I do that? Oh, by her appearance. Like, go after her hair, do all this stuff. But I also think it's interesting, too, because everything we've seen with Chris, he's very direct with his actions. Brian's being a sneaky little guy. Like, this girl's like, oh, well, next time, oh, yeah, no, it's fine. Good job. And then he does all this stuff. And then when she brushes her hair and there's gum in it, she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, oh no, let me come help you. And while he's helping her, heavy quotation marks, he's like yanking her hair, causing her pain. And he's like, sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. She's like, oh, it's okay. I appreciate your help. Right? It's almost okaying the abusive behavior, but this girl doesn't know it's abusive. She doesn't know that he set this up. It's something that he knows, though, and that we know as an audience.
Yep. Class starts up. She sits down, starts to brush her hair. Brian turns when she, goes, ow, something stuck in my hair. Brian comes over, is like, oh, it's gum. Like, here, let me help you. Yanks on her hair and is like, ow. Oh, sorry. Oh, not a big deal. The worst part about this is that I kind of get the impression that the girl likes Brian and he's just terrible.
I know it was in my notes when we watched this movie, and Knox was laughing at me for it, but I'm like, I wanted to smack this kid in the face so much in this movie. And again, I guess it talks, to the skill of the actor, but oh my God, I hated Brian's. I think I hated Brian more than I hated Chris. Like, oh, this kid drives me crazy.
Then we cut back to home. Chris is back, and he has the woman. He has set up shackles on pulleys and winches, and he has her fixed upright. She appears to still be unconscious, so he has her, arm at the wrists and the ankles. She is restrained. He tightens the winches, and then he starts inspecting her and makes the rather poor choice of pulling her lips open so he could inspect her teeth. Need I remind you that this woman is a cannibal? So she bites off his ring finger, ring included. And as he's reeling in pain and screaming, she, spits the ring out on the floor and then very loudly swallows his finger.
Which I love this scene so much. So there's a couple of different things that I caught on here. One was the way he was inspecting her body, checking her teeth, doing all that. Very reminiscent to U.S. history, where we talk about slave auctions and how they would, inspect teeth and look at different things. And again, viewing humans as property, not viewing them as human beings, which is just horrific. Putting his finger in her mouth, like, yes, he's inspecting the teeth, like I was saying, but I think it's one of those, right? It's a violation. He has put a part of his body into a part of her body. It's still just a power thing. He has violated her space. So for her to not only cut or bite off his finger, but to bite off his ring finger, right? Like, very symbolic of this man does not honor his vows. This man is violating his marriage and the sanctity of it. And then spitting at the ring at him just made me laugh so hard.
Yep. So Chris is not happy. So good thing he's right-handed for him. So he reels back and punches her real hard twice, and she is not impressed. And he is only further infuriated and hits her again, and this seems to knock her out. And this is where we get the amusing line of him screaming at her, "This is not civilized behavior."
I think I literally threw my arms up in the air when we watched this. Like, oh my God, and kidnapping a person from the woods is civilized? And what is wrong with you, man? But yeah, no. Funny line, just because, again, the absurdity of it.
So then he goes back inside the house, dresses his wound, takes some pain meds. Then he comes back with some gear. We see he's got this heavy pair of ear protectors hanging around his neck, and he appears calm as he addresses her, but he assumes she doesn't understand him as he begins to explain that, he needs to show her who's in charge. So of course as he's doing this, he pulls out a block of wood and like puts it behind her and tightens the winches and whips out a gun and shoots the block of wood behind her with the gun right next to her head.
Which I think is a little terrifying because I think it shows one that he might have done this before, right? Because the entire point of the piece of wood is to prevent ricochet off the rock. Because he could very easily just shoot the back wall like it's a cellar. It's not going to hit anybody back if it went through, but it might ricochet off rock, might hit him. So him putting the piece of wood there, it's like, oh, he knew that could happen. Has he had this happen before? But also he's taking away her senses, right? The things that she can use to protect herself, the things that she does every day. Plus, I'm sure that had to hurt like, oh my gosh, I can only imagine how badly that hurt her. Um, but I just think that it's interesting too to think about how often we see, or even me personally, see people come in who are in domestic violence situations. And because there's nothing physical, they say that there's not abuse. And I know this is physical, and I think this would be considered physical by anybody, but it just shows that there could be abuse happening and not even leave a mark on somebody.
So she is in pain. She is hissing at him. She is thrashing around, pulling against her restraints. And after a few seconds, he tells her to be nice as he puts the gun next to her face again, and she mellows out and stares. I mean, she's not happy, but she stops.
And I do think it's interesting, a lot of these scenes, and I think toward the as the movie goes on, I think he starts to realize it. But he's also under this assumption of the fact that she can't understand him. He talks to her and says these things to her, and I'm just like, you know what? She could be responding to you. She could know exactly what you're saying and know exactly what kind of person you are now. But again, I think it's that arrogance shining through with all of this. Because again, he shoots the one ear, he goes to line up for the second one, and she immediately stops. Which you might say, oh yeah, she figured out that that hurts. But I do think she understands quite a bit of the English language.
And then Chris makes a comment about how he's starting to feel better about losing his finger. But then he goes inside and gets the family together to show them what the surprise is, and we get their reactions. Darlin is, curious at first, and Peggy and Belle both kind of they're a little bit in disbelief and like what? Whereas Brian, like 0 to 60 is like, we get to keep her.
I flip and hate that kid. I just, oh my gosh. And again, kudos to the actor. I always think about that quote my friend said, that when you absolutely hate an actor, that just shows how well they did in the role to make you hate them. But oh, I hate that kid so much. But no, I also thought it was interesting too that, Peggy looks scared. Darlin's a little kid. I don't think she understands what's going on. But Belle has this look on her face that I took as, well, he did it. I knew this day would come. Okay. Like she knew that his behaviors had been escalating and that this would happen at some point.
So Chris explains that it is our duty to civilize her. She was out living in the woods like a wild woman, and we need to make her ready for society. And yeah, he sends the others after Peggy and Belle to fetch things to clean her up and feed her. And this is when Chris and Brian have their exchange of like, oh yeah, we get to keep her. So the attempt to feed her oatmeal doesn't go over well. She knocks it on the floor, and Chris kind of is like, well, when she gets hungry, she'll eat it. And just an aside, even though it's very prominent in this scene, yeah, that carving in the back there, that means nothing. It's just there. we thought it was going to come back and mean something or get used for something. No, it's just there.
It's just so bizarre. Like, why is this here?
But then we have, a quiet dinner of the family. Both Belle and Peggy are a little distracted and not really eating too much. And after dinner, Darlin brings her radio out, and she calls out, "Is like, hey, I like to listen to this in order to feel better about things." And she plays the song. And interestingly enough, the song is about like keeping secrets and I'll never tell and stuff to that effect.
Yeah, which again, like this makes me feel better. And it's just like, this song actually is not that. I mean, it sounds kind of like a high upbeat song, but like you said, right? It's keeping secrets and that we don't need to tell people. And I think it just again shows the brainwashing that's going on in this family.
Then we cut to a little bit later. Darlin is in bed and she shares a room with Peggy. Peggy is in her bed and she's listening to music. And then we pan over to see Chris watching her in the doorway. And he sits down on the bed to have a talk with her, and she's just kind of staring straight ahead as he does so. And he's talking about her getting older and moving away, and she needs to be ready for that. And she's all like, "Yes, Daddy," and all that.
Well, and if I remember right, like she has her knees to her chest, she's hugging her knees, almost like that fetal position, but she's sitting upward, but does not maintain eye contact with him. She has stiff posture, which is usually a big sign of like fight, flight, freeze responses going on, that adrenaline. So, yeah, lots of fear coming from her.
Belle comes up to watch the tail end of the conversation, and then she and Chris go to get ready for bed. And as Chris is brushing his teeth, Belle kind of is like, "So, what's the plan?" It's like, "What are you doing? This is crazy. What have we?" And Chris just unceremoniously just slaps her across the face. Finishes brushing his teeth and climbs in bed and tells her she needs to get in bed too.
Which, right, he didn't have answers for her either on these things. And so she talked back. She disrespected me, so I slap her. Ooh, sorry, yawn. But no, I think it's also interesting too because we see her in the doorway with Peggy, like you said, right? She came on the tail end of that discussion, and to me, it seemed like she was doing it almost to observe to protect her daughter. Um, which I think is why she had like this moment where, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to call him out for this. So that idea of, hey, I'm protecting her, that gives me power, right? Like I'm powerful, more powerful than my daughters. So maybe I can stand up to him. Just didn't work out that way.
Cut to the next morning. We see Chris on the way to work. He's got a nice suit on. His hands all bandaged up, and we see, he's a lawyer. He has his own office, all that good estate stuff, and he's kind of sort of casually keeping his hand hidden a little bit.
Well, because it shows weakness. If somebody sees that he has an injury, like all of a sudden, especially kind of going with the predator prey background themes that they have in this movie, it's like, right, when you have an animal that's injured in the wild, they tend to then become the prey. So I think he's hiding it just so that people don't ask questions, people don't view him as weak. But yeah, then when I saw he was a lawyer, because the beginning part with Dina, I think it was Dina, um, when he was talking about, well, I'll give you a fair deal and all this stuff, I thought he was a realtor. But then to see that he's an estate planner, I'm like, okay, so again, these are people who are coming to me when they're usually at their most vulnerable. Saying this as somebody who has done hospice for a long time, everybody out there, please do some end of life planning. Even if you're healthy, even if you're in your 20s, let people know what you want. It is important, but most people don't, and they wait till the last second. So again, I think that makes him feel all powerful, that he knows this stuff over these weaklings.
And from the way he types, because he's like literally hands curled up above the keyboard, pecking at it, you can see that, you would be able to see his hand. But the second the secretary walks in, he, hand under the desk, he turns his the other arm comes around to block the view. He's like, "Hi, how you doing?" And they discuss his schedule for the day, but we'll come back to him in a moment, because then we switch to the woman. She's testing her restraints. Again, no, that carving does not matter. It's just there. She finds a weakness in the support above her left, and she's yanking at it to see if she can get it loose, but progress is very slow.
But as we've seen throughout this movie, she is a survivor. She will do what she needs to try and get out of here. And I think what's actually kind of cool about her is that she's so calm throughout this whole movie. Like, she rarely shows any emotion. She's just like, nope, not putting up with this. Nope, I'm going to get out of here.
And mind you, this sequence, because this is a whole thing where we're switching between people quickly. We'll get, Chris, the woman, Peggy, Brian, I think Belle's in there too. They're switching back and forth really quick, but we have the dialogue of one scene going over and over. So then we switch to Peggy, and she's sitting out of gym class. The gym teacher actually comes over and asks her, "You're not feeling too well today?" It's like, "No, I'm not okay." "Well, feel better. It's okay." And then the gym teacher runs over to instruct the other kids. Yeah.
Well, and this is when we actually have, oh my gosh, my brain is dead. Miss Raskin, right? Her regular English teacher starts making comments that she's noticing changes, right?
Miss Rattan, she teaches geometry. And yes, this view here is her under the bleachers. She's having a smoke. She's talking to an older teacher, gentleman, who's totally eating up the conversation she has and totally not creeping on her. The thing is that she's actually kind of playing into him, because she's talking about the way Peggy is dressing, because Peggy has got all these heavy sweats on, and she remarks that Peggy used to dress kind of provocatively, skirts and off the shoulder tops and stuff like that, and she used to flaunt it, and now she isn't. So that this rapid change in her behavior must mean that something is up. And the older gentleman is like, "Oh, did you used to flaunt it?" And Ms. Rattan is like, "Oh yeah, I totally did it, ha."
Well, and I wouldn't even say provocatively. I think the word that she actually uses is cute. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I think it is something that you do see with people who go through assaults or really drastic changes and things like that, is you will notice differences in how they dress and how they carry themselves, the way that their self-confidence is, their self-esteem. And this is where we start getting the really, really big hints that Peggy is probably pregnant.
Because after Ms. Rattan finishes talking, we go straight back to Peggy, and she lies down and begins crying. But then we quickly cut to Belle, who's shopping. She's got Darlin with her, and I didn't notice it the first time, but upon watching, she's grabbing a lot of soap. But a friend approaches and asks about. It's like, "Oh, so yeah, the big party thing was a lot of fun. Could you host the next one? Could we have it at your place?" And Belle is kind of talking, looking in the distance, and just like, "Oh no, our place isn't really suitable for guests at the moment." Ha ha.
But I think it's even interesting looking at this picture is, look at any other photo from a movie or TV show where two people are talking in the grocery aisle and they're looking at each other. Belle does not have eye contact with this woman at any point in this conversation. She's always looking either down or looking to the side, like almost past her, looking at groceries. Yeah, she's grabbing a whole bunch of soap, which moves into one of the next scenes. Um, but I think that there's also something about this woman also says something about Belle flaunting it and how she, whoa, but you guys should host because you guys do all this. And I'm like, really? To be perfectly honest, again, gorgeous woman, not trying to shame anybody, but Belle seems so much more plain in how she presents herself compared to a lot of the other women that we've seen in this movie.
And mind you, we're cutting back and forth because there's actually this song playing in the background that kind of builds, and it started playing when Peggy was laying down, and it's kind of more subdued in the scene with Belle, but we flash back to Peggy every now and then. But then next we cut to Brian sitting in class, and he's just sitting there, and he's thinking of the woman. We see a few flashes of her, and this smirk spreads across his face.
Gotta smack that smirk off his face. Oh, the kid. But I did think it was interesting, like the switching between him and the woman at this scene. I felt like, I don't know, like think about two alpha dogs that are about to fight. Like, you know what? Nope. I am the bigger dog here. No, and I think it's just showing that predatory aspect between the two of them.
And then we actually do cut back to the woman, and she's testing her restraints more. She's noticed that weakness. She's pulling harder, and it does look like it's starting to grow weaker, but this was a lot of exertion, and there's that oatmeal on the floor. And I think there's actually, like, she sees a mouse run up and eat some of it and run off. And she relents and, bends down and tries to eat the oatmeal. And, yeah, it's slow going, also because she's kind of still bloody in the mouth from when she got smacked.
Aren't there maggots and stuff in it, too? Like, I mean, it was really gross. I do remember that. But I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it is not pleasant looking, but it's what you got.
You got to do what you have to survive, right? Like, I think that is a lot that goes through this movie.
And then we cut to Chris, and he's talking with the secretary, and he starts to ask her to make him more coffee. Actually, what happens first is that they're going over his itinerary, all the stuff he has planned, all the business they've got going, and she kind of looks at him and she poses the question. She's like, "Don't you think you're overextending yourself a little?" And like you see, like the briefest of like cracks in his facade as he's like, "No," it's like. Then he starts complimenting her perfume, and she's like, "Oh yeah, thank you, it's so good." It's this, that, and the other. He's like, "Yeah, sure, that's nice." He's like, "Can you get me another cup of coffee?" And he hands the cup to her, and she notices his finger, and he's like, "Oh, nuts." She, asks, like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And he, let's see, I wrote here, he's like, God, where did I put it? He tells her that a sweet-smelling lady, he got too close to her, and she just bit it off. And they share a laugh, and she goes to get the coffee.
Right. And like you said, you start to see a little bit of the cracks because it's like, oh, you're overexerting yourself, AKA, oh my gosh, you're not doing a good enough job. Maybe you need a break. Right. That's not what she said. She actually is really caring and wants him to be okay. But he takes that as an insult. Like, ah. But no, I did find it hilarious and also terrifying and also very true where he told her the truth. How did you lose your finger? Oh, got too close to a lady. She's right bit. And she looks at him and then she starts laughing and she looks at him and then he starts laughing. She starts laughing and then they just leave it. It's like, oh, okay, he must be joking. Nope, he's not. But that charisma comes through, that controlling people by their emotions is also a really big thing.
All right. Then we cut back home. Belle is making cookies with Darlin, and Belle, asks what shape should they make the cookies into, and she goes through a bunch of different cookie cutters, and Belle tells her to make them. Darlin tells Belle to make them in the shape of little men, and Darlin then posits the question: "Is like, do you think the lady has? Do you think she likes cookies?" And Belle makes the comment: "Is like, I don't think she's ever had a cookie in her life."
And I think that this is the scene where, like, while they're making cookies, I again notice she just stares off, and I know that's a little bit later where I think I'll talk about it really where I started to notice it. Um, but I think too, right? It's this kind. Do you think that we should help her, mommy? Do you think that we should do this? And Belle's just like, well, maybe, well, could be, well, right. There's no confident answer. There's no actual answer, and I think that's probably how she always has to talk with her husband.
And speaking about talking to Dad, we cut to Brian outside. He's trying to peer into the cellar, and Belle catches him and yells at him to get away from there. Brian gets defensive, saying he was just trying to see how she was doing, and Belle reprimands him. He's like, "Do you want me to tell your father that?" And then Brian goes inside.
Like I said, you would think that because the son is the son, that it's like, oh no, my dad. No, everybody in this family is scared of this man. Everybody is terrified of this man. And even, too, that's the thing with a lot of people who actually have narcissistic personality disorder and sociopaths, is he doesn't love his children like you would think of loving. It's more that they are an extension of himself, right? So this is my property. This is what my offspring is representing me. And so when they win, that's me winning. And yeah, I just find that interesting that you see the fear in everybody and you think that he's treating Brian better, but it's only because he sees that boys should be treated this way, because that's how he should be treated, as the greatest person of all time.
All right, and as Brian comes inside, cookies are done, and Darlin offers Brian one of the little man cookies. Brian accepts it, and the first thing he does is just a swift chop it in half. Darlin objects. She says you're supposed to eat the head first. And Brian's like, nope, I chop them. So, dear audience, foreshadowing is a literary device in which a writer gives an advance hint of what is to come later in the story.
And I think when we saw this scene, Nox literally turned to me and went, well, what is that foreshadowing? Obviously, it's something big. And hey, it is. We will get to that eventually.
But then we cut to Chris picking Peggy up from school. He's lighting a cigarette as Peggy climbs in, and she asks him not to. He ignores her. Like, without a word, just lights up.
And again, you can kind of see the body language here, very stiff posture. She's actually almost like leaning into the door to get away from him. Yeah, and hey, please don't smoke. And he does it anyway. And I'm curious if it's because she's pregnant that she's asking him to not smoke. Is it he's smoking more because he's stressed about the woman? I don't know. That was something that I kind of thought about, but we never actually get an answer for.
All right, so when they get home, Chris tells Peggy to feed the dogs, and Peggy tells him that it's Brian's turn. So, Chris tells Brian to do it. Brian, going into the barn where the dogs are kept, he's angrily yelling at the dogs as he's got a can and he dumps some food into their trough. And then he, I'm sorry, I left out the part where he actually threatens them with a hose to quiet them down first. But, after he fills the trough for the two dogs, he crosses the pen to put some food in a bowl outside of an interior doghouse. The occupant of the doghouse does something that startles Brian, and he falls backwards with his arm landing in dog shit. So he angrily takes the food back and goes to wash himself up. And as he's doing so, he spies a manual drill hanging on the wall.
And I know, like every serial killer show that you ever see, they talk about, hey, if you're cruel to animals and don't have empathy for animals, that kind of a sign of sociopathy. Um, I will also say too, and I know it's such a little thing, but I also thought it was a big message. Is when Chris comes back with Peggy in the car, and Brian's practicing basketball. Actually, when they come up before they have this conversation about the dogs, and Brian immediately walks up to his father, stands in front of him, and puts out a handshake, almost like he was meeting the president of the United States or something like that. It's like he just very ritualistic, I think it would be. Like, hello, father, greetings. I am glad you are home. Let me show you the sign of respect. Um, but yeah, going back to the dogs, it's beautiful German shepherds, by the way. I just love dogs so much. But he's very cruel. I'm going to get this hose. I'm going to do this. But he won't actually cause harm to them. Again, this is dad's property. These are dad's things. I can't hurt them, but I can yell at them and I can threaten them.
Then back inside, Belle is boiling a big pot of water, and then we cut to see Peggy sitting at the table, just kind of staring into the distance. She seems to flash back to a sequence, a conversation that she has with Ms. Raton. And Ms. Raton explains that she's noticing the changes that Peggy is going through. And these are worrying signs.
And again, talking with teenagers, being very direct about it and accusatory about it. Um, Again, she wasn't being accusatory in the sense of trying to shame her or make, but like, hey, you've been doing this and you've done this and you've done, and I, again, if you look at things like healthy communication, we talk more about I statements. So instead of like, you're acting really different, hey, I've noticed some changes. Is everything okay? Right? Because as soon as you say you, it's like pointing the finger, you're wrong, you're this. You, even if you're not saying that, some people can take it that way. Um, but again, Peggy doesn't make eye contact, a lot of that guilt and shame, looking sideways. Again, you can see this in the image here. Um, but yeah, I just, again, I applaud Miss Raton because of some of the efforts, but we'll get into she drives me crazy and falls into a trope that just drives me nuts in movies.
Then we cut back to Brian, who very quickly takes the manual drill and drills a hole in a peephole in the cellar door. He looks through, sees the woman. She's looking right back at him, and then he plugs the hole up with some dirt and some gum.
And the part right before this too, again, sorry, I know I keep backtracking a little bit. I'm sorry. Um, but when Belle is fixing, she's boiling pots of water right before we have that flashback to Peggy and Miss Raton. That was when I really noticed the disassociating. She's almost like floating from place to place. Like she doesn't even look like she's on a mission, just moving and not paying attention and not focused. And so that's when I really started to be like, yeah, this is disassociation. But going into this drill, right? Like he's already been reprimanded for looking. He wants to have a faster, quicker, easier way to look in, but he can't let his parents know, so he hides it.
All right, and then we find out that the water being boiled was for the purpose of cleaning the woman, because Chris takes the family back down into the cellar. They're going to clean her up, but first Brian has to clean up the woman's mess because she's been there all day and she has relieved herself. Get the shovel. And then he says that Belle and Chris will be actually cleaning her, and Brian objects to having to leave, and Chris tells him, get the hell out.
And all these looks and exchanges, right? Like anytime that Brian is told that he can't do something with the woman, he looks at her with such disgust. Like, oh my gosh, I have to leave because of you. Oh my gosh, see, like you did this to me. And again, that kid, it must drives me crazy.
So then Chris sets to trying to clean her off. He's got rags, he's got the pots of water, and as he's going to it, the woman is just kind of passively not reacting to Chris. But then there's a moment where Belle and Peggy sorry, not Belle, the woman and Belle sort of lock eyes, and they seem to share a moment. And Belle bends to pick up a 2x4 and slowly creeps up behind Chris. And, the woman and Belle are looking at each other intently. Then Belle looks up and sees the weakened fastening that the woman had been pulling at. And she points it out to Chris and hands him the 2x4 to reinforce it. And the woman does not look pleased.
And I went to go look it up and I couldn't find it just because I didn't look in time. But there's actually a lot of instances, and there's a really famous one that I want to say happened in Ohio, I can't remember, where victims of serial killers or kidnappers, and especially serial kidnappers, will actually act like they're in on things with the kidnapper. Like they'll help them to torture victims. They'll help them to um, do different things. And the one instance that I'm trying to think of, it was a woman that I think this man had kidnapped like 4 other women, and she would help him and around, with the things that he needed done. So he eventually let her walk around the house with the chain around her ankle. And then because she kept helping him with everything and was doing so well, he eventually said, okay, well, you know what? You can be off the chain then. I trust you. And as soon as she got a chance, she bolted and got the cops in that house. So it was kind of this playing the long game thing. So I wondered a little bit if Belle was doing that in this moment. That was a thought that popped into my head, right? Because the woman's looking at her and saying, please help me. I need help. And yeah, she could have beamed Chris in the head right there, but what if she hadn't knocked him unconscious? What if she had missed somehow? What if Brian came back suddenly? Like this was not a point where I think she could have done anything, but I do think it upset the woman and made her think like, okay, this woman is not on my side and this woman is not going to help me.
Then with the support weekend and him dissatisfied with how he's progressed so far, Chris decides that they can't properly clean her here in the cellar. So he sends Belle in to for something she's been working on. And then we cut to a scene where Chris is using a power washer to strip paint off of this wooden board for some reason. And then he sends Brian inside to go and get Peggy.
And I think when the power washer is going on, it's like it shows Chris with the power washer, and then it goes inside to Belle with the sewing machine and kind of keeps going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And also, again, this kid drives me crazy. But I thought it was interesting that it's showing like a man with a man power tool and women with their little women machines, like the going back and forth. Also in those realms with how Brian acts, right? Because Brian is told, go get your sister. Yes, sir, I'll do it. And he comes in and he asks his mom, hey, where's Peggy? And she's like, well, I think she's upstairs. And he's like, Peggy, Dad, she reprimands him for yelling, but he just looks at her like, how dare you speak to me that way? And I'm just, again, this kid, I just want to hit him. But again, showing that difference of respect and the different realms, quote unquote, that this family dynamic has created.
Yep. So Belle is working on the sewing machine. Brian enters and it's like, Dad wants Peggy. Where is she? And Belle tells him she's upstairs in her room. He should go and get her. And Brian just turns and yells, "Hey, Peg, Dad wants you." And Belle reprimands him. Is like, "How dare you?" And like this is he kind of gets the I'm going to go with disgusted look on his face when Belle tells him to go up to his room. But Peggy joins Chris and Belle outside, and she's holding up this sheet because the woman is now, secured. She has her hands are in restraints to a bar over her shoulders, and the bar is attached to like a drum. And she's also been stripped.
So again, I feel like this is the dad, like, oh, see, I'm being so respectful having women help me with this. But again, I think it's almost exerting his power because then he uses the power washer to give the woman, a shower. And ow, that's why we see the paint being peeled off that piece of wood. And that's, Belle looks away. Peggy is just so upset by what's happening, and he doesn't care. It's kind of like he's giving his dog a bath, and the woman is just screaming. But I also think it's interesting in this scene.
Well, just one important thing we should notice is that before the power washer is turned on her, the woman gets a good look at Peggy and seems to zero in on, Peggy's belly. And she leans forward and rasps out the word baby.
And again, I think that goes to that very beginning part where I think she may have had a baby in the past. And I think at the very end of this, you're going to tell me about all the research you did and what you found and how it spoiled it for me. But I think that's right. She's connecting with some of the women in this household, and she is recognizing, okay, well, these women are women too. And what are they doing? But, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nox, I want to say that the scene when he's doing the power washing on her and she's screaming, the only reason we know she's screaming is because of her face, because all we hear is the motor of the power washer. And I just think that that's so interesting, where, again, it's almost dehumanizing her, right? Since you can't hear her screaming, it's not so bad.
Yeah, it's, as he's turned the power washer on the woman, she's in pain. She's, screaming her lungs out, but the sound of the power washer and its engine are overpowering. We cut to Peggy and Belle. They're exchanging looks, and Peggy's like, yelling at her dad to stop it. I don't know if the dad can't hear her or just ignores her. But Peggy runs over to the engine and turns the power washer off. We see the woman like shaking. She is, cold, pain, all this, and Chris is like, okay, well, we'll finish. He'll have Belle finish off cleaning her with the towels.
And I think that it's one of these moments too, right, where like when he slapped Belle earlier in the movie, when she talked back, he didn't have an answer, so he just smacked her. I think that at this moment, when Peggy turns off the power washer, the reason he doesn't get upset, quote unquote, because I'm sure he's fuming, is, oh, let me make it seem like this was my idea, not that you actually stepped in and took this power away from me. But again, Peggy starts showing, in my opinion, that she has this fight in her, that she knows these things are wrong. And yeah, she has the fear. We've talked about her body language all this time, but she also is almost willing to fight for the woman more than she's willing to fight for herself. Which I've definitely seen and have talked to clients before, and I've actually made the joke, oh no, I'm a therapist. I have no idea what it's like to be focusing on other people's issues instead of my own. And, looking away awkwardly. Okay.
And let me just interject that another reason I think Chris might be not seeking any retribution against Peggy is because he's rather pleased seeing the woman shaking and in pain as he, the Belle and Peggy run off to get towels. Chris looks down at her and smiles, and he says, "You're learning."
like I said, this guy does a really good job of playing his role the way that he does, but I like him and can stand him more than I can stand that little kid. So I think that that shows just how much too this learned behavior of charisma. Like he's charismatic, and so we're able to put up with him. I always think about Jeffrey Dean Morgan on The Walking Dead as Negan. Negan's a horrible person. FYI, I have not finished The Walking Dead and kind of stopped at a point. So you guys might say, "Oh, but yeah, I know. I didn't watch past that though because kind of was over it." But anyway, anytime Negan was on screen, I was smiling because that man is so charismatic and so suave. And I'm not even talking like good looking. I'm just like when he comes on screen, he's magnetic. And I really feel like Chris was that way in this movie. Brian did not have that learned charisma yet, which is why I wanted to punch him every time.
So the woman is returned to the cellar, and it's just Chris and Brian, or sorry, Chris and Belle. And Chris tells Belle to dry her off, and Belle remarks like, "Is it safe?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, of course it's safe." And Belle's like, says the man who's missing a finger. Then Chris chuckles and says, "Oh, that's fair," and then points the gun at the woman and says, "Okay, you can do it. I think she'll behave."
And look at that smile on his face, right? Like he is enjoying this power dynamic that he's over the woman, right? You can't move. I have a gun pointed at you. And Belle is afraid, but look, I'm forcing you to do this thing. And ugh, just awful.
And then when she finishes drying her, she dresses her in the outfit that she was making with the sewing machine, and it's this thing that buttons on, so they don't have to put things over her arms or over her head. They can just clip it in place. And they step back to look at that, and Chris immediately remarks, "She looks like one of those polygamous wives, doesn't she?"
Which I know he's trying to say like people who maybe are a more religious sex, but he's also, I think, trying to hint like, hey, Belle, she could be, a sister wife, or she could be part of this family. Maybe she could be, right? Almost threatening Belle, like, hey, you know what? You need to pull your weight around here, or you could be replaced.
And then we cut. Chris returns with a bowl of food and a bottle of water, and gives her a drink. The woman happily accepts, and then as he's feeding her, he's got her to where she's like leaning forward almost as much as her restraints allow, as he's just at the edge of her reach, spooning it to her. And then as she seems docile, she seems like she's accepting the food and the water, and he's marks it, she's learning, so he tries to teach her how to say thank you.
Again, let me teach you how to tell me how great I am and make sure that you know that I am in power here. And Nox, and I think probably the rest of the internet right now, is really into Amazing Digital Circus. And they've had this song recently, and it always makes me think there's a line in there saying something about like, "Oh, you guys must have misunderstood who was in control here," right? Like I feel like Chris does that this entire movie.
Next scene, cut to school. It's after hours. Ms. Raton is having drinks with the gym teacher, and they're calling each other babe. Yeah. So Ms. Raton remarks that she has the phone number for the Cleek residents out, and she shares her concerns from earlier. She's sure that Peggy is pregnant and that she should tell the parents. But the gym teacher, who is wise beyond her years, warns her that she could just make the situation worse.
And this is, and Knox can tell everybody here just how much this pisses me off in movies. I am a mandated reporter. What that means is that if people tell me certain things, I have to report it to the proper authorities. There is a certain chain that things have to go through. Depending on the state that you're in, is the different things that you have to report. I'll be honest, we live in a state that I probably would have to report if somebody was pregnant. Luckily, I haven't had to deal with that yet. To a parent, just because there's some different things here. Anyway, it is not your job to investigate. It is not your job to tell these parents what's happening unless it's mandated by the state. And even if it is, there are certain ways that you do it, such as maybe having the parents come to the office there. Hey, the school might not have a counselor because it seems like a really small town, but maybe have the principal involved. Maybe make sure that there's some safeguards in case, oh, yes, no, okay, well, no, we'll get her to a doctor. And then he beats her afterward. Like, there's certain ways that you go about this, not, well, should I just call them? It's like, what? No, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
Well, it kind of reminds me of we saw Weapons recently, and you had the principal who was trying to handle everything, and I remember people saying that was unrealistic. It's like, no, actually, that's short, actual counselors. Yeah, the principal would be handling it.
Well, but in that movie, it made me upset because it's like, well, you don't have any proof. Okay, the entire part about mandated reporters is you need to have reasonable suspicion. I don't need proof. If a kid tells me that, like, here's an actual real example. If a kid tells me that their parent at home hits them every night and they don't have bruises, I don't just go, oh, well, there's no proof of that, so I don't report this. Or if I have a kid who tells me crying that they don't want to go home because their dad is mean, and when I ask them, hey, what's going on? They're like, well, he sometimes hits me. Okay. What about this? What? Okay. Nothing is said to me. I still report that. I mean, I've definitely called CPS on a number of occasions. I've called APS on quite a few occasions, right? Because it's not my job to investigate. My job is to report and say, hey, this is what is happening. You guys decide if you want to investigate. Just because I call and make a report doesn't mean that they're going to. In fact, I remember one time calling to make a report and they said, are you serious that you're wasting your time with this? And I'm like, absolutely, because one of the places I worked for got a $10,000 fine for not reporting when we were accused of theft. We were being accused of stealing a probably 50-cent phone cord off of a landline. But we had been fined $10,000 for not reporting something we were accused of stealing that was found 5 minutes later. So I'm like, nope, have to report it. But of course, they didn't investigate it. It wasn't worth their time. So anyway, sorry, long rant, because it drives me really crazy to hear all these teachers and social workers and nurses and therapists and just all these people who are like, oh, well, I need evidence. No, you need to have a reasonable suspicion, and then you provide what you have to the proper authorities, and they decide what to do next.
Also reminds me of that movie, was it Antlers, where the principal goes to investigate on her own, and she decides she has to explore every nook and cranny of this suspicious house in order to be satisfied. It's like, no, stop.
Call the cops! Ah!
Anyway, moving on. So Misratone does call the Cleek residence. It happens to be dinner time, so Chris sends Peggy to check and see who it is. And when Peggy arrives at the phone, she hears Misratone leaving a message, and Peggy quickly deletes it.
Well, and again, teachers, if you are watching this YouTube channel, you can tell me how your rules work, right? I think almost everybody knows about HIPAA, the Health Information Protection and Availability Act. I think I'm doing that off the top of my head. But that's supposed to protect people from having their personal health information given out to the community, right? Like, I can't come on this show and say, well, I saw Jane Doe who lives in Los Angeles, California on this date. And right, you can identify who these people are. If I talk about, oh, I had a client who did this, and it's something very specific that could be narrowed down, that's a HIPAA violation. And last time I checked, it's $10,000 per violation. Teachers are something called FERPA. It's like the Family Education. Okay, I can't remember the rest of it, but it's supposed to be protecting student information as well. So leaving a message on the phone with her concerns, I'm like, you don't even do that with a doctor. Your doctor doesn't call you and just leave a message saying, "Oh, hey, yep, turns out you got chlamydia. Just wanted to let you know. Have a great day." But like, no, you say, "Hey, can you please call us back at your earliest convenience?" So this drove me a little crazy because I'm like, I don't think this is realistic either, and could get her in a lot of trouble.
All right, then we cut to later that night. Chris sneaks out of bed, completely unaware that Belle is wide awake. As he's going down the stairs, we cut to see that Brian is also awake, and he follows Chris outside. Movie's about to get very heavy, people. Chris crosses the yard into the cellar. He's got a little candle lit with him. And yeah, he goes into the cellar, and that's when it begins. And Brian is there to watch the whole thing as his father assaults the woman. The woman is very passive and doesn't say or do anything as Chris does the deed, but she does lock eyes with Brian, who's watching through the peephole. This unnerves Brian, and he backs away and runs back inside.
And there's kind of a number of things that I noticed in like the sequence of events here. And I apologize, Vox. I might start stepping into different scenes that you have ready to go. So I apologize. But I want to say, like, right before all this happens, when Chris starts to get out of bed, we see Darlin, and she's in her bed and has the radio playing. I think she actually has headphones on, maybe, but I don't know. But it made me think about, okay, she might actually have those on to go to sleep because she shares a room with her sister. And if her sister, and again, heavy, heavy stuff here, people. That's why I tried to warn in the beginning. If this is that her sister has been assaulted by a family member and that's what's resulted in this pregnancy, they might be having her listen to music so she doesn't hear these things, so she doesn't know these things. Her parents fighting, she won't hear it because she's got this radio going. So I thought that was just really sad. It just broke my heart when I saw it. But also, Brian following his dad and being ready to go. If Chris is the one who did something to Peggy, I think Brian may actually know about it. I think Brian might have even watched that, just like we see him watching the woman. But I really do feel like a lot of this scene too, right? The woman not reacting. It's not because he's not hurting her or that this is okay. It's because she's also keeping up that predatory alpha personality of, I'm not going to let you break me. I'm not going to let this happen. And so she just stays very stoic. And again, locking eyes with Brian, like, I know that you are also like this. And you're both horrible. And all of that hate that she has at Chris, but she can't lock eyes with him, she gives to Brian. And I think that there's also a scene here, and again, Knox stop me, where Belle is in bed, like you said, she was awake when he left, and she's crying. And I don't think she's crying because she's sad. I think she's crying just because all of this is just so much, and she's so anxious, and she's scared of, well, what happens now? Is he going to escalate even further? I don't think that she's sad because he is doing this to the woman, or like she feels like she's been betrayed or anything like that. I think it really is. She's scared of him.
Yep. Once the deed is done, Chris makes his exit, returns to bed, puts an arm around Belle, who is still wide awake, and you do see the tears.
Well, because there are report. Oops, sorry.
No, go.
Well, there are reports too where you have had men primarily. I'm sure there are women, but the reports I've read have all been men. But men will go out and perform really horrific acts and then come home to their spouses or partners and also consummate a sexual relationship, which that one's consensual versus the one from before. But again, I think Belle is just terrified. Is he going to escalate? What will this turn into?
But then we cut to the morning. Peggy is in bed, not looking well. Belle comes in and tells her she needs to get ready for school, and Peggy, asks, she's not feeling well. Can she please stay home? Belle says there's nothing wrong to her and she should still go to school.
And again, look at Peggy. Look at it. Look at her in this picture. Those eyes. She is terrified. She doesn't know what's going to happen. She doesn't know how her parents will react. She doesn't know what's going to happen at school. Miss Raton is starting to leave voice messages for her parents. Like, I wondered a little bit too if the "hey, I want to stay home today" was because she's afraid her teacher might call during the middle of the day and she won't be able to intercept it, and then she's in danger of what could happen. Yeah, just again, this poor girl, and the actress was really good in my opinion, where just the fear she's constantly under.
Then Chris and Brian step outside together. Chris, heading towards his truck, car, whatever. And, today is going to be a half day for Brian. So Chris asks him if he has any big plans for the day. Brian is non-committal, got nothing. And Chris just makes the comment of, "Don't do anything I wouldn't do."
These guys. Ugh. But again, I think it's that whole extension of self, right? Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Hey, you represent me. You know that I own you. Don't do that.
Then we have a brief cut to school. Ms. Raton has noticed Peggy's absence.
Which I think this is the moment where she was like, you know what? I have to say something. Like, this is getting out of hand. Something needs to be done about it. But again, I'm screaming like, that's not your job. There has to be a protocol for this.
But then we skip ahead again, and Brian is on the way home. As he's walking into the yard, we get the voiceover of the girl at school who's asking him if he wants to go to a movie later. To which Brian responds like, "No, I got some stuff I have to take care of at home."
But again, he is starting to put up this facade that other people are not seeing what a horrible person he is. He has this girl who has a crush on him. You're seeing that there's actually all this kind of normalcy. But yeah, we know this guy's not normal and it's about to get worse.
So when Brian gets home, he doesn't even seem to notice that Peggy is on the couch. He goes in to sees a note from his mom on the fridge with a list of chores he needs to do, and he grabs a cookie and grabs some keys off a shelf and goes out to the barn where he opens a toolbox. Then we see him descend into the cellar. And he's seeing that the woman does not act docile toward him. She snaps and hisses at him. So he pulls out a cookie and chops it in half right in front of her. He offers one half to her. She does not react, doesn't even look at the cookie. He tosses the cookie to the side and remarks, "Who the hell doesn't even like cookies?" So he paces the room, eating his own half of the cookie. He looks at her, the woman still growling at him, and he pulls out a pair of pliers.
And I think that if anybody here has seen our audition video, so plugging our other videos, just letting you know, I made a comment about how I had been avoiding that movie for so long because of two very specific scenes and how horrible they were going to be. And when we actually watched that movie, you don't actually see a whole lot. It's almost like not showing you, just hearing the screams and those sorts of things made it worse in your head. You were making up what this looked like. You were not actually seeing it. And so your brain went hot. Like, that is this scene. I think all we see is Peggy reacting to her hearing the woman screaming and pliers and hands moving toward the camera. Like, we don't even actually see the pliers touching anything. Oh, and then there's that sound of the pliers are going into flesh, but we don't actually ever see what Brian is doing.
Yeah, so Peggy runs out of the house as she hears the screams of the woman. We are briefly shown flashes of Brian thrusting with the pair of pliers. They grow increasingly bloody the more we see of them. Peggy throws open the cellar doors, and we see a flash of Brian twisting the pliers, and blood actually pours over in front of the camera. Peggy's screaming, "What the hell did you do?" And she's shooing him out of the cellar, and he just kind of stomps away, the pliers held tightly in his fist in one hand as he marches towards the house. Peggy apologizes to the woman as she covers her up, and the woman says something to Peggy that she does not understand.
And again, I think that this is these moments of, hey, Peggy is willing to stand up to her brother. Nobody else is standing up to any of the men in this family. Peggy is actually trying to protect her, even if she can't stop it. Peggy is putting in these efforts. So I do think that that's why the woman doesn't ever attack Peggy in these scenes where she's really close, right? Like she could bite Peggy here if she was just, wanting to hurt people. But she literally, again, this is survival, and this person is actually trying to help me. I'm going to have respect for that. But yeah, Brian he is so nonchalant and just mad that he gets reprimanded. I'm like throwing a little tantrum. That kid.
All right, so we cut back to inside later. Belle and Peggy, Darlin, and Brian are sitting at the table. Belle sends Darlin upstairs to her room. Darlin protests she didn't do anything wrong, but no, Belle tells her she needs to leave. Chris arrives at home and notices the scene. Is like, oh, what's going on here? And, well, Belle tells him that Peggy caught Brian in the cellar. And she describes that not only did the flashes that what we saw didn't see, but she also mentions that Peggy saw that Brian was touching himself while doing it.
And the reaction. Son, is this true? And he nods. And he goes, okay, well, boys will be boys. Oh my God. Right?
Oh.
Like even, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. So, Belle is just angered that Chris's response is to ask for Brian's side of the story, despite the fact that Peggy caught him red-handed. And, Chris, kind of firmly hand up is like, tells her to calm down. But we get the boys will be boys comment when, Belle is confused that Chris is satisfied that, well, no one was hurt. Boys will be boys. And then he makes the comment that, plus, now that the woman's been cleaned up, she's not half bad to look at.
Normalizing the behaviors. Hey, you know what? This is just something that's normal. Just live with it. Why are you being so emotional? Calm down. Like, ugh. It's awful. And right, like, yeah, he asked for his side of the story versus actually believing anything that Belle tells him, but there's nothing. I would be so mad too. Like, oh, you have no idea how furious I would be.
Sorry, this is his boys will be boys face.
But no one was hurt. No, we saw the blood. We heard the screaming. Someone was hurt. Oh, okay, understood. No one that is important to me was hurt, so it's fine.
And at this, Belle snaps. Like, she starts screaming. She's had it. She's had enough. And then she swiftly points out. Sorry, she says, "You are an officer of the court, and she is a human being." It's like, do you know what would happen to all of us if you got caught? And then pointing outside towards the barn, just what's going on with the goddamn dogs out there is enough to get you sent to prison.
And this is where I went, huh, okay, it's not just the fact that those dogs bark all day. What is going on in there? But it's important to note that this is right that breaking point for Peggy, or not Peggy. See, I'm doing it too. This is the breaking point for Belle because we've just seen her like nonchalantly say, like, "What is the plan here?" And she gets hit. She's flat out yelling and calling him out on his BS in this scene, so you know she's mad.
Anophthalmia. That is your shame, is what he says to her. We misheard him. I had no idea what he was getting at, and you thought he was referencing something else?
I heard the Almia, and I was thinking it was like somebody named Alma. I was like, what? And this is why I watch ADHD also, but this is why I watch things with subtitles, is sometimes I'm just like, what are we talking about here? But do you want to talk about what anophthalmia means, or do you want to wait until we get to that point?
Oh, we're going to wait until we get to that point because, he points out anophthalmia, that is her shame. To which she shoots back that's like she did not ever condone what he did, and that, he cannot keep getting away with this. And to which he shoots back is like, what the hell do you think you're actually going to do? And they kind of share a laugh when she says that she's going to leave. She will take Darlin and Peggy and leave, and he can keep his rapist son that he's grooming to be just like him, and they can, stay while she leaves.
And that is a moment that these actors are actually really good. Now, if you watch this movie, Brian can just seem like this actor's not that great, and that might be why he irritates you so much. But this moment, right, where she says, "I'm taking the girls and you can keep your rapist son." The look on his face when he is basically told, "I don't want you. I can't stand you. My daughters are more important to me than you." Right? And I think too, like looking at this, like she may not be saying that she doesn't love him. I mean, he is her son, but especially because he's been this extension of his dad and he's been groomed by his dad to become this horrible person. I don't blame her. I'd probably say the exact same thing. Like, I know you keep him with you because I can't trust him to be safe around my daughters. I cannot trust him to be safe around other human beings. And so I'm leaving. But that drop in his face, wow. I thought that was just showing just how much I guess that hit, and how he didn't even realize that was an option, right? That his mother might not love him, that he might actually be not doing the right things.
Well, Chris has had enough. With one swift blow to the gut and then another across the face, Belle is now unconscious on the floor. Chris vents his frustrations mostly over her thinking she could ever leave him, that she'll amount to anything and she could ever get away, and that she matters and he doesn't, and that sort of thing. He turns to Peggy, tells her to get a wet cloth so that she may tend to Belle. And as he's standing over Belle, there's a knock at the door.
So this is where I might talk very, very briefly about regulation and windows of tolerance. I can't remember if I've talked about this in a previous movie, but we have what's called a window of tolerance, and it's different for different people. How much can I take before I shut down, and how much can I take before I explode? And the thing is, and think about, I don't know, like being stressed. Let's say you're at work and you have a really big project due. Okay, you're going to be stressed and you're going to be heightened, but you can handle it. You're okay. Like, I just get through this. Okay, now I'm going to relax. Whew. All right, bring that down. But let's say that you have a big project at work, and then all of a sudden your car's not working when you're trying to get to work. And then it turns out that you're sick. And then also you just had your debit card stolen. And when you have all those things piled up, you're going to hit a point where you're just going to just lash out at the world, or the opposite, kind of like what we've been saying with Belle, that I'm just going to disengage. I cannot deal with this. I need to go away. That, I think, is what kind of leads up to some of the next few things. Is he's already heightened because of what Belle just did to him, because of her standing up to him, and he has not had a time to come down before what happens next starts to happen.
So Chris sends Peggy to answer the door while he picks Belle up off the floor and seats her in the chair. Peggy opens the door to see Ms. Raton. Ms. Raton would like to come inside and discuss with her parents because she's got some serious concerns and she just wants to help. Peggy insists that now is not a good time, but then Chris appears in the doorway and greets her and tells her that she could come right on in. And so we get sitting on the couch, we get Chris, Brian, and Peggy. And sitting in a chair across from them is Ms. Raton. She notices Belle and asks, could she join in with us? It's like, no, she's resting. And another thing is that Chris is insisting, because Ms. Raton is being professional. She's referring to him as Mr. Cleek. But Chris is insisting that she just call him Chris. And, well, Ms. Raton kind of takes a while to come around to that.
So I don't know if anybody here has been in a situation like this, but, you see somebody and you're like, okay, no, this is okay. And you notice something that just doesn't seem right. And it puts you on edge. And it's like, oh, God, okay, how do I handle this situation? What do I do next? And again, maybe it is just me, just because of the field of work that I'm in. Like, I've definitely have done home visits where I drive up to the house and I see something outside. Then I'm like, yeah, nope, I'm not going to stop this car. And usually I would call the families and say, hey, can you meet me outside? Because I don't feel comfortable because I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. In fact, actually, one time with home health, I walked into a drug deal and, that's not the right apartment. And I just turned right back around, just pretended like I didn't see anything. Their lookout was obviously not that great, but I'm just like, I'm not getting shot today. No, thank you. But I think it's this moment where she notices something's not right. Like, she went in all confident, but his insistence, she's trying to keep it professional. And that's not what's alarming her. If when you watch this scene, Chris is agitated. He's trying to hold it together, but he's just like, instead of it's like, oh, call me Chris, please. It's like, no, call me Chris. We can be friends here. Go ahead. And it's like, yeah, that's not friendly at all. So I at least applaud this character for having okay situational awareness, where she definitely, you can tell that she knows something is wrong off the bat. She's not falling for what he's thinking are his normal charms, because he's not in that regulated mode.
So Ms. Raton voices her concerns. She comes around to pointing out that Peggy is pregnant. Peggy objects, and Chris is like, well, are you sure? And, Ms. Raton points out that Peggy is starting to show, and it's not a lot right now, but it'll be more soon. And this is where Chris points out, is like, Peggy doesn't have a boyfriend. I would know if she did. And Ms. Raton is like, well, okay, but she's pregnant and she should get help. And Chris is like, well, what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting her brother did it? And Ms. Raton is, objecting, is like, no, I don't mean to imply anything. He's like, well, then if you don't mean Brian, then you must mean me. And it is at this point that Ms. Raton stands up and is like, okay, I need to make my way out. And, Chris is, commenting about how this, doesn't seem very professional. How dare she, accuse him? And she's, trying to deflect. Like, no, I didn't mean anything like this. I should go. This is a bad idea. And well, Chris knocks her against the door. Doesn't quite knock her out, but she is down for the moment. And next we see her. She's being dragged across the yard, and her hands tied up to a rope, and Peggy is begging for Chris to stop.
And I do think that it's interesting in that scene because I guess I had never considered up until that point that Brian could have impregnated Peggy. Mostly because of how Peggy acts. She's willing to stand up to him. She's willing to call him out on his crap. And whenever her father is around her or touches her or she's on high alert. So I thought it was interesting that they put that in there to almost cast doubt on like, well, could this, wait, baby? I'm still convinced that it was Chris who did something. But yeah, it escalates. And what do you say on those things? Are you saying this? Oh no, that's not. But her getting up to leave, I think he realized he was losing control. Again, he's starting to get himself heightened. She's not apologizing to them at all for saying, oh no, you're right. I must be incorrect. I must. And so he hits her just like we've, again, multiple times in the movies. When he doesn't have an answer or he's not getting what he wants, he decks the person in front of him.
So as he drags Ms. Raton along and Peggy is begging him not to stop, Peggy makes the unfortunate choice of telling him that he can't do this. She's a teacher. She's her friend. Well, Chris ties her to the post and then turns on Peggy and, lifts her up, and he goes into like the misogynist tirade, and it's very demeaning, very holy crap. Like, yeah, he's a mask off moment. But the important thing to note is that when he's talking about how worthless women are, he refers to Belle, he refers to Peggy, and then he refers to Peggy's sisters. Plural. Then rant over. Chris apologizes to Brian. And for losing his composure and warns the boy that he's never to let his emotions get the best of him. Then they drag Ms. Raton into the barn.
And it literally is like he waved it off. Like he does this motion in front of his face with his hand. I don't know if you ever watch movies where they make fun of actors that are improvising and they go, and scene, where they wave their hand in front of their face. That's exactly what he does. And again, I actually did not catch the sisters portion when we went through this. Nox went, did he just say sisters? I'm like, huh? What? So I actually had to rewatch this scene with the subtitles because, again, even for most therapists, I have done jobs and been in situations that I don't think a lot of my coworkers or other therapists I've worked with have been in. Like I've been in some really high dangerous situations working inpatient psych and have been involved in some really crazy things so much that my mother has heard about them later and gone, if I had known that, I would have made you quit your job. So I don't know if it was just, I know that this stuff happens and I've seen people get super escalated. I mean, I once had a girl put a fist through a wall like an inch from my face and I did not react. I have something that I call my psych face where I am completely flat. I don't show any emotion. It kind of helps to protect me from people when they do get agitated. They're not saying that I'm scared. They're not saying that I'm agitated. They just are like, well, I can't read this person. She's unpredictable. I don't know what to do. And it actually starts to make them think about what to do next. So it calms them down. I almost think that happened to me watching the scene. He was so violent and like what he was doing. And I think my brain literally shut down into, nope, I got to go into protection mode right here. So I actually found that really interesting that I had kind of that knee jerk reaction that I would have like I was with a violent patient.
Well, it is an intense scene, but we are well into the third act now, people, and shit is about to hit the fan. because then they drag her into the barn. Brian is holding Miss Raton, and he's actually, hitting her with a switch in order to keep her down. As Chris goes into the dog pen and ties the dogs up to the one of the side walls. And as they do this, we quickly cut to Peggy and see that she's run inside, and she has grabbed some keys.
And yeah, Peggy grabbing those keys, we know exactly what she's about to do, and this is why this movie has ended up on top 10 list. What happened when we released the beast, quote unquote? Again, I think the entire point of this movie is that Chris is the bad guy, but yeah, she's starting to go, and I thought it was interesting the parallel of she's going to go release the woman while they are about to imprison this other woman.
So they drag her into the pen and leave her just outside the reach of the dogs, and then they lock the pen behind her. And she is just outside of the reach of these two dogs. They are barking mad, trying to get at her. Yeah.
Well, and look at this picture, right? Like Brian and Chris. Really, I think Brian has no emotion. He's looking at it like, okay, how's this going to play out? What's going to happen here? How's this going to work? And Chris almost has this, I don't know, I guess sense of pride. Like, look at my boy. Look at how well he's handling this. Chip off the old block. Like, oh, kind of disgusting.
Cut to inside, we see that Belle has regained consciousness, but it's still too painful for her to stand. She tries, and she quakes with the pain. Darlin comes downstairs, and because she's been alerted by the sound of the dogs, and she's asking what's going on. But then we cut to Peggy, who's working the lock on the cellar. Belle tells Darlin that she needs to go upstairs and hide in her room and not come out.
And again, I do think it's interesting. Like I said, we've got kind of these three scenes. We have somebody being protected, somebody being released, and somebody being imprisoned, all at the same time. But I also think that shows that Belle knows what's going on, and Belle knows that everything is bad right now, and is just trying to figure out what to do next. But she was hit so hard, and the wind was knocked out of her so much, she literally is having trouble moving. Yeah.
All right. Inside the barn, Ms. Raton is shuffling, trying to get away from the dogs, and she edges back towards the doghouse in the corner. From safety, Chris is yelling that that's a bad idea. You don't want to do that. And as she nears the doghouse, something reaches out and grabs her. There's someone in there, and yeah. If you're like us, in case you missed it the first time, this is when Chris repeats anophthalmia a few times, and he asks Miss Raton if she knows what that is. He, doesn't clarify, but the girl from the doghouse leaps out and starts biting at Ms. Raton's neck, and it is gruesome. It is bloody. It is stringy. Ms. Raton she is racked with pain. She's crawling away, trying to scurry away from this girl in the barn, and the girl kind of ambles out on all fours and starts reaching forward, and she's moving around like she can't see. And once she jumps onto Ms. Raton's back and takes another bite out of her, we see that the girl has no eyes.
And just a few different comments with this one. So, anophthalmia is a birth defect where babies are born without one or without both their eyes. And again, with the way they kept saying it, I wasn't sure what it was, but I actually have a friend who had a child with this. So I actually am aware of what it is. Um, but this is where, and I talked to Knox about this actually just right before we started this, that it's so sad that scene way, way earlier, and you don't need to go looking back at that. But when Belle says, what's happening with the dogs is enough to get us sent to prison. Not what's happening in the barn, not what you did to our other child, what you're doing to the dogs. And I think that that's such an interesting thing to think about, is that she's not even treating or referring to her daughter as a human being anymore. Her daughter is a dog. Her daughter lives with the dogs. Her daughter acts like a dog. And I think that that is a way that she has justified some of the things that her husband has done. And I think also too, right, that idea of the anophthalmia is your shame. Oh, you did this. You didn't grow our child correctly. That's not how this works. That is not, but I think there is a lot of shame placed on women, especially when there are birth defects or loss of pregnancy or stillbirth, a lot of different issues, that it's the woman's fault versus that it may be genetic, it may be nature, it may be different things. And so I think that's kind of how he was able to fully cement control over Belle, was making her think that this was her fault and she should be ashamed of it.
So then we cut back outside. Belle is stumbling across the yard, and she makes it to the cellar just in time to see that Peggy has released the woman. The woman looks up the stairs and sees Belle at the top of them. And, her vision is blurred because, she hasn't been in the sunlight for a while. But we get that heartbeat, and as we're cutting back between this scene and Ms. Raton being attacked by the other girl, then the woman just charges up the stairs and tackles into Belle. She, picks her up, throws her down, and then mounts her. And then the scene is, quickly going back and forth between Ms. Raton being bitten, Belle being bitten, and them trying to fend off their attackers. And yeah, so as Belle is dying, we see flashes of her children, Darlin and Peggy, sitting at the table. I have this out of order. I apologize. We will get to the children at the table in a second. But as Ms. Raton is dying, we see a quick flash of her cuddling in bed with the gym teacher. And then Ms. Raton dies. And here's the flash of Belle thinking of her children. And then she dies.
Now, what I think is really interesting too, and I think Knox and I had made the comments before, and of course we have seen Pollyanna McIntosh, who plays the woman in other things too. This woman is giant. I don't think there has been a single scene in this movie up until this point that has shown how, like, she's 6 foot. The actress is 5'11", so she's almost 6 foot tall, right? And I think this entire movie, we've seen her either where Chris has been above her, where he throws the net on top of her. She's been on her knees, or if she is standing, we think that it might be because she's raised to a certain point. This is where I think we actually get to see her in all of her intimidating glory. But I also think that it's, and again, I think we talked about this with the audition movie, where this movie really is a woman revenge fantasy, like a feminist type going up against men thing. But with audition, when we talked about that, we spoke about how, unfortunately, I didn't see it that way, and there's a couple of critics who haven't seen it that way because innocent people were killed by her in that movie. Belle, I believe, is killed here because she did not protect her children. And like I said earlier, I thought that there could be these parallels of where she's trying to just do what Chris wants her to do so that she can get more privileges, so that she can protect her kids a little bit more. But once we have everything come up with the and I don't think they actually say her name until the end credits, but the daughter who is in the barn with the anophthalmia is named Socket, right? Because I keep saying the wrong name. We recognize that there's actually a lot more that she probably could have done to protect her children. And I think that that is why she dies. That is why the woman takes her out, is because she is not protecting her children like she should.
Then we cut back inside the barn. Chris and Brian are watching as Socket and the dogs feed on Ms. Raton's corpse. Brian, looking down, asks, "She doesn't even look real anymore, does she, Dad?" And Chris replies, "She does to me."
Chris is so sick, guys. Like, again, I feel like the actor does a really good job being charismatic. So, but he is a sick man. So I do think about that a lot. And I think that this is a small town, so I may not be correct on this. But how many other women has he hurt? Like, I don't think that the woman is the first woman that he's had fantasies. He just decided, like, he's so methodical and so skilled at it. And then that part, right? She doesn't even look real anymore. Well, she does to me. Has he hurt other women or like killed other women? And yeah, anyway, that scene right there and that line really is horrifying to me, because I think that it just shows that this man is just sick.
All right, so Chris rattles off a list of things he wants Brian to go and fetch in order to clean up and dispose of what's left of Ms. Raton's corpse. But as Brian turns and goes towards the door, it is thrown open by the woman who stands there. As she approached the barn, she picked up the blade of a lawnmower, and there she is. And seeing this, Chris immediately bolts to the corner. He just, no hesitation, he's going to look for something to defend himself. But Brian stands there stunned. And a reminder that foreshadowing is a literary tool. You know, something earlier, something happens later, blah, blah, blah. Guess what happens to Brian? Because the woman is strong, and she has a lawnmower blade, and Brian is directly in front of her, and then suddenly he's half the man he used to be.
But I think that, again, it's she, like, I'm sorry, that scene where she swings open that door and she's got that blade in her hand. Holy oh my gosh, it's like you can see how strong she is. Like, she's almost like an Amazonian gladiator. So yeah, like one fell swoop and boom, Brian is cut in half. I don't think he even knew what hit him. But Nox, you can correct me if I'm wrong. When Chris bolts for the corner, doesn't he kind of shove himself off of Brian? I'm not saying that he shoves Brian at her, but I really got the gist, again, that self-preservation, like, this is an extension of me. But if I die, then it's not worth him living. So he almost sacrifices his son to try and get the upper hand to go get a weapon in the corner.
No, I think there was some distance between them because Brian had gone towards the door, and Chris was still looking in the pen.
Okay, I just remember just kind of thinking nope, screw my kid, I gotta save myself.
All right, so the woman, having swiftly dispatched Brian, turns her eyes towards Chris. Chris is in the corner, and we see that he has recovered his rifle. he brings it to bear against the woman, and she swings the lawnmower blade at the barrel and knocks it down, and causing Chris to shoot himself. He won't have to worry about that too much, because then the woman swiftly lifts him into the air and then plunges her other hand into his gut. And there's some squelching, there's some squirming. The woman is smiling as she growls at him, and then she pulls out his heart and takes a bite out of it right in front of him before he collapses to the ground.
Which I was kind of curious of this scene because I was just like, no, she was too low. Was that his heart? I mean, it kind of looked like a heart, but that doesn't make sense. And I really think she actually went down and like up and under, sort of a thing, like went through so that she didn't have to deal with his rib cage and the sternum. So I'm like, yeah, okay, that could have been it. But yeah, very satisfying for her, and I think us as an audience to have this happen finally.
So then the woman steps outside the barn, and Socket follows behind her. She's, sniffing the air and gets too close to the woman, so the woman backhands her. And Socket, kind of whimpers in front of her, and the woman offers her the heart. And Socket takes it. And starts eating it.
Well, and again, I think that it goes into that whole alpha mentality, right? Like we saw Socket just rip apart Miss Raton. She doesn't even ever at any point show any aggression toward the woman. And I think it's because she knows that she is outmatched and this would not end well for her.
But then we cut to inside the house. Peggy has Darlin in her arms. They race down the stairs. Peggy hands Darlin some supplies like a water bottle, and then she starts digging through, I'm assuming, the mother's purse. She's looking for car keys. Then Darlin notices the woman outside, and she goes out to see her. Walks right up to her and offers her the bottle of water, which the woman takes and immediately drinks.
And I think that there's this thing that people don't always think about with kids, and it's just the innocence that they have, right? It's not, oh, you're covered in blood. What does that mean? It's like, oh, hey, you're dirty. Here's some water for you. And again, I think that that's why Darlin would never endanger either from the woman, is she does have this innocence. But like her idea about what's going on, like I don't even think she probably realized that her dad was a bad person. I don't think that she realized the things that her brother was doing. I think this was just life. This is just how things were. Which actually makes me very, very sad for her. I know it sounds actually almost like hopeful that she can still be such a good person and caring toward other people, which is good. But I hate that anybody has gone through a lot of these things in this movie.
Yeah. So Peggy comes running up behind Darlin and watches on in horror as she gives the woman the water bottle. The woman drinks it, tosses the bottle aside, and to carry ahead with the alpha asserting dominance thing, the woman licks her two fingers and then puts them inside Darlin's mouth, forcing Darlin to lick them as well, which she does. Then the woman offers her fingers to Peggy. Peggy hesitates, so instead the woman leans forward and puts her hand on Peggy's belly. And she says something else in her language that, neither of the girls understand.
And I know that we talked earlier about Chris putting his fingers into the woman's mouth earlier, and how that's such a violation of, autonomy and bodily autonomy. In this scene, it's more of a, are you willing to accept to be a part of this group or be a part of my family, sort of a thing, versus actually like being a what's the word I'm looking for? Intrusive force.
Then the woman takes Darlin, first, cradling her hand behind her neck and pushing her forward, and then taking her by the hand, and starts to walk away towards the woods with her, with Socket following behind. Peggy hesitates. She hangs back, looks back towards the house, and seems to think for a while, and almost waiting until the woman, Darlin, and Socket are, towards the tree line, she starts to follow. And then credits roll.
But wait, there's more.
So after the credits, we do have this interesting vignette of it appears to be a dream of Darlin's. It's sort of like half cartoon animation, because we have live action Darlin. She's on a ship, and she's going through like the ocean or something, and she looks through a spyglass and she sees this island in the distance, and it's an island with like two mountains on it, and one of them has kind of a skull face on it, and this is her destination. And she makes it to the shore, and the cartoon animation kind of falls away. We get this kind of stop motion figures of trees and stuff, and this interesting skull face twig leaf monster. And they're kind of gesturing towards each other, and Darlin smiles, and the creature offers her a flower, and as Darlin accepts it and smiles, flowers start growing all over the creature.
Which I wasn't sure like how or specifically how it was going to go down, but I kind of felt like those crazy credits, like I said, when Darlin and the woman finally meet up at that last scene, is I think Darlin was just innocent. I almost saw the crazy credits at the end as going out into the woods and leaving her family, and what that was like for her through the eyes of a child. And for her, it was adventures, going to new places, like maybe there's magical creatures out here, and her thinking about those things. That's how I took it. But apparently Nox said during his research he found some other stuff. So yeah, that is the woman.
All right, so to explain this, the woman is part of what is called the Dead River series. This is it has a set of 3 novels and a handful of short stories. The woman is the 3rd novel. The entire series was very controversial for its extreme violence, graphic descriptions of gore, as well as very dark themes about humanity and civilization. The first novel, which came out in 1980, was called Off Season. It is the description kind of reminds me of The Hills Have Eyes, where you have a tale of New Yorkers secluded in a cabin where they are hunted by cannibals, only to be rescued by an old country sheriff. The novel was originally released sanitized, as most of the depictions of gore were removed. The uncensored version was not released until 1999. The sequel, Offspring, was released in 2009. Some of the cannibals escape the sheriff, and they continue to terrorize the area over the next decade. The sheriff gets called back into action, but occasionally we're given a look into the life of the cannibals, where the woman comes into focus as a major character. Then The Woman comes out in 2010, where the woman is the only survivor of the sheriff's wrath, but she has lost everything, including her offspring. Then the events of The Woman take place. There don't appear to be any major differences between the movie and the novel version, considering how they were co-written by the director of the movie. But after The Woman, we get... there are 2 different sequels. One is a novella and one is a film. The novella, which is, again, the author Jack Ketchum, co-wrote with the director of the movie, Lucky McKee. It is the further exploits of the woman and her new tribe, Darlin, Socket, and Peggy, where they're surviving, and they acquire a male for breeding purposes. The other sequel is a film that Pollyanna McIntosh directed herself, which involves, believe, Peggy and Socket to die off in sometime in the interim, but Darlin is now a teenage wild girl, and there is some plot between her and the woman where Darlin is rescued. She's taken to a hospital, and then she gets taken to a Catholic boarding school where they attempt to civilize her. And she and the woman will meet up again to exact some kind of plot. And that's the different permutations of the Dead River series. But I almost forgot. The one major difference between the film and the novel version of The Woman is that sequence after the credits is actually a dream that Darlin has over the course of the movie, which I believe, I'm not 100% sure, have not read the book, but I believe it happens on the night where Chris goes to abuse the woman. That is Darlin in bed having that dream.
Oh, interesting. So it's actually a direct scene from the book.
Yep, correct. The director moved it as kind of a post-credits thing because he felt that it kind of disrupted the flow of the film.
I'm actually a little bit curious to go back and look now because, again, that scene, she's listening to a radio, right? Because I talked about how I think maybe she listens to music because of the abuse happening in the household at night. I'm wondering if the song she's listening to, because we could hear it a little bit, is the same song that she's having in the dream. I'm curious to go back and actually kind of compare that. Also, though, I mean, yay for Pollyanna McIntosh that she did a sequel to this, but I hate thinking that poor Peggy didn't survive this. Now, I know I should also say poor Peggy and Socket, but Socket, I feel like, has had such a difficult life and that this has been such a hard thing for her. Like, I don't know anything about her really, but Peggy, like being pregnant and having to go through all this, have lost her family, and then she also dies, like, that breaks my heart.
So, interesting thing of note is that after doing all my research, Jack Ketchum is the writer, wrote the novels, and there's a handful co-wrote with the director. He'd been around for a long time. He's praised by the likes of Stephen King. Definitely known for his gore and other dark themes. Definitely sounds like some stuff I'd probably want to pick up and read at some point. Unfortunately, the man himself passed away in 2018 at the age of 71 after a long battle with cancer. Also, Jack Ketchum is a pen name. His actual name is Dallas William Mayer.
It sounds like a much cooler name than Jack Ketchum. I mean, I know he probably changed it just for anonymity purposes, but okay.
However, the director himself is kind of an interesting guy because it's so weird. It's not stated out, but it's just looking at it pop up again and again. It's like, so yeah, I take it he's friends with Rian Johnson, of Star Wars fame. Because his earliest credit is that he was actually an actor in a short film by Rian Johnson, and then he went on to direct several episodes in Rian Johnson's TV show.
Well, I think also we looked up too that Pollyanna McIntosh is now married to a Bobcat Goldthwait. I'm just like that. So weird how Hollywood is and the connections, but
Yeah, but Lucky McKee has been up to some interesting things, and looking at some of his stuff is like, man, I never heard of this. I should probably watch it, because I'm going to be honest. What little I've read about it, his original horror film that he wrote and co-directed with another guy who's a friend of his. So in 2001, he directed a low-budget horror movie called All Cheerleaders Must Die. It was certainly a low-budget horror movie. And then after making a handful of movies, The Woman Among Them, he got the chance to remake it himself. And it happened. From what I gather, people were like, "Yep, that's a horror movie. It's you know what you're in for." But he directed this movie called May, which is apparently got a huge cult following. It reviewed very well, but it was not financially successful. But it's psychological horror. People speak of it highly. I kind of want to watch it. But his next film was called The Woods, which he kind of got jerked around when it came to releasing. It was supposed to release in theaters, but then it got pushed back, and eventually got released direct to video. It got a lot of technical praise, but did not do well financially. Then his next film was a crime thriller that was also based on a Jack Ketchum novel. Because they got diverse work. Weird thing about it is that so the movie's called Red. It came out in 2008. But the thing is that Lucky McKee was the original director, and he got replaced partway into production. And no explanation has ever been given why.
sorry, I'm still stuck on the fact that he directed May, because the woman who plays Belle is the woman from May. I still haven't seen it. It is also on my list because apparently it's Robert Englund's favorite horror film, and you know that he is my spirit animal. So yeah, no, this guy's had actually a really interesting career with horror movies.
Oh, and a special note is that he one of his most recent films is a movie called Old Man, which stars Stephen Lang. And it is not a prequel to Don't Breathe, despite apparently being billed as such when released in certain markets.
Stephen Lang is much more nuanced than that. Why do it? Ugh. The man is not just Avatar and Don't Breathe. Come on, guys.
But I really need to watch Masters of Horror because he directed an episode of that as well. And just looking at the list of people who worked on Masters of Horror is like, why haven't I watched this yet?
Like I said, guys, we are taking requests. We have a right to say no because there are certain movies that I refuse to watch, and I will not name them so you don't request them. But yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. And again, that's why we do horror films, is because I think it's such an interesting reflection on psychology and how people react to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Did we mention Masters of Horror in Audition? Because Takashi Miike directed an episode of that as well.
It's hard for me to remember what is stuff we've mentioned in the show and what is stuff that you and I just talk about on an everyday basis.
But that is The Woman, and that is quick and dirty rundown on Lucky McKee and Jack Ketchum. Got any more insights to share?
I think that this movie, and again, why it kind of popped up on a lot of our lists, is it kind of starts out like, oh, hey, it's the woman. Okay, so maybe she is uncivilized. Maybe she is the villain. The entire point of this movie is supposed to be talking about who are real villains in society, was kind of what my takeaway was, right? We have this misogynistic, charismatic, narcissistic asshole, right, who is doing all of these horrible, horrible things, and he's the real villain. And he's breeding and grooming another villain. Like, look at what's happening with Brian. He's going to be another person in our society. So I mean, don't get me wrong. The woman definitely seems like she may have done some bad things in her past, especially if they're cannibals. Again, Sonny Bean, go look it up if you have no idea what I'm talking about. It basically was the inspiration for The Hills Have Eyes. But no, that's what I took away from this movie. Is it's like, look, you can stand up to those everyday horrors and monsters, or we just continue to let them wreak havoc in our society. And this is just a very, very sad central look at it, right? One family and how it impacted them.
But so that is The Woman. I understand if people believe it to be a difficult watch because the gore be gory and the subject matter is dark. But if you haven't seen it, and what we do recommend it, and if what we've described hasn't turned you away from it, go ahead and check it out. I'm kind of on the fence if I want to see the other films, the prequel and the sequel. I do want to read the books, but
And I think this might be an important note. I know we say in the beginning that if you are suffering from mental health conditions, to please seek a professional, to please call 988, which is a crisis hotline. If you're experiencing domestic violence, if you do know of things, even if it's like a neighbor, or if you are experiencing sexual violence of any kind, there are resources in your community. Please, please, please reach out to them. We want to make sure that people are safe. We want to end cycles of violence. Um, Again, I think that's why horror movies can explore some of these themes, is because it's not real, right? But unfortunately, I think that's what I found so hard about The Woman, is there's a lot of things happen in this movie that are I know of these things. I have called police on these things. I hear of these things. So yeah, please seek help if you can, because we want to try and make sure that people are safe.
All right, well, that's all we've got for tonight. This ran a little longer than usual. Hopefully, everyone can sit through it and enjoy. We appreciate likes and subscribes. We appreciate comments, suggestions, all that kind of thing. We strive to improve. Hopefully, we'll become a bit more regular in our scheduling. But we get sick, and we got a baby boy to look after, and some nights we really just don't feel like it. But we got stuff on the horizon we got planned. Hopefully we get done before it's old news. But, our next project might be something a little bit more hip with the kids.
Oh, thanks for making me feel old, Knox. That helps.
Winona Ryder is Spock's mom. We're old. Hell, that movie is old now.
Yeah, right? That's the original Star Trek for some kids. Like, oh my God.
All right, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.